There's a particular kind of betrayal that doesn't announce itself with a fight or a slammed door. It doesn't come with raised voices or broken dishes. It comes quietly. It comes dressed in, "I love you," and Sunday morning coffee and 6 years of shared furniture and inside jokes and a future you built together, brick by brick, with your own 2 hands. Marcus Webb didn't find out his wife was living a double life because she slipped up. He found out because he was already watching. And by the time she thought she was about to disappear, he was already gone. Marcus was 35 years old, living in Denver, Colorado, a quiet man who worked in financial compliance for a mid-sized firm downtown. Not flashy. Not loud. The kind of man people described as steady. The kind of man you wanted next to you in a crisis because he never panicked. He just calculated. He'd met Claire at a work conference in Austin 6 years prior. She was in marketing. Sharp, beautiful, magnetic. The type of woman who walked into a room and immediately understood its geometry, who mattered, who didn't, where the power was sitting. Marcus fell hard. And fast. Which, for a man who measured everything twice, said a lot. They moved in together after 8 months. Got married in a small ceremony outside Boulder 2 years later. No big church. No 300-person guest list. Just 30 people who actually meant something, mountain air, and a sunset that looked like God was showing off. From the outside, they were solid. From the inside, Marcus would tell you it was quieter than he expected. Claire traveled a lot for work. Regional sales conferences, client dinners, quarterly strategy summits. He understood that. He supported it. He never once questioned it because he trusted her absolutely. That trust was the weapon she used against him. It started with a receipt. Not even a suspicious one, just a hotel charge in Seattle that ran 3 days longer than her conference schedule. Marcus noticed it the way he noticed everything. Not with alarm, but with the quiet curiosity of a man whose brain was wired to flag inconsistencies. He didn't confront her. He didn't say a word. He just started paying attention. Over the next 6 weeks, Marcus began cross-referencing. Flight records against itineraries. Phone activity patterns against claimed locations. Credit card statements against hotel loyalty program check-in histories he could access through their shared account. What he found cracked him open. Claire had a second life. Not metaphorically. Literally. In Portland, Oregon, just a 2-hour flight from Denver, Claire Reyes Webb was known as Claire Reyes. Single. Mid-30s. Marketing consultant. Lived in a sleek Pearl District apartment. Had a boyfriend named Daniel Cho, a tech entrepreneur who believed every word she said because she was very, very good at this. She'd been maintaining this parallel existence for at least 2 years. Maybe longer. Marcus sat alone in their Denver kitchen at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday night, all the evidence laid out in front of him on his laptop screen, and he felt something shift in his chest. Something quiet and final, like a door closing softly in an empty house. He didn't cry. He closed the laptop. And he started planning. Welcome back to the channel. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, and remember, the people in these stories had every opportunity to play it straight. They had every chance to walk away clean. They just chose the hard way. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from. And make sure to subscribe. You're going to enjoy this one. Here's what most people would have done in Marcus's position. Confront. Explode. Threaten. Beg. Expose. Collapse. Marcus did none of those things. Because Marcus understood something that most people don't: anger is expensive. It costs you clarity. It costs you leverage. It costs you the element of surprise. And in a situation like this, surprise was the only real currency he had. So instead of blowing up his marriage in a single emotional night, he did something far more deliberate. He mirrored her. The first thing Marcus did was consult a divorce attorney, quietly, privately, using a personal email account he'd created solely for this purpose. He needed to understand exactly what his legal and financial exposure looked like. What was joint? What was separate? What could be moved, shifted, or restructured before any papers were filed? The attorney, a sharp woman named Patricia Holloway who had seen everything in her 22 years of family law, listened to Marcus's situation and leaned back in her chair with the expression of someone who appreciated a patient man. "Most clients come to me after the explosion," she told him. "You're coming before it. That changes everything." It did. Over the following 8 weeks, Marcus began making moves that, on the surface, looked completely ordinary. He refinanced a personal investment account, one that predated the marriage and was legally his alone, pulling a substantial sum into a separate holding structure his attorney helped him establish. He quietly updated the beneficiary on his life insurance policy. He began cataloging every joint asset with careful, documented precision. He was building his exit. But that was only half of what he was doing. The other half was watching Claire build hers. Because, and this was the part that would later make his attorney go quiet for a long moment, Claire was also preparing to leave. Marcus had discovered this through a combination of small observations. Claire had started being slightly too normal at home. Too attentive. Too relaxed. The kind of calm that doesn't come from contentment, it comes from having already decided something. She was setting up her disappearance. She'd been slowly moving personal items out of the house under the guise of donating or decluttering. She'd begun forwarding certain financial correspondence to what he now knew was her Portland address. She'd even had a quiet conversation, which she didn't know Marcus had overheard, with someone on the phone about timeline and making it clean. She was planning to vanish. To simply step out of one life and fully into the other, leaving Marcus with a half-empty house, a pile of questions, and whatever financial mess she could engineer on her way out. What she didn't know was that Marcus had already packed his own bags. Hey, before we get to the part where everything unravels, if you're watching this and you've ever trusted someone completely only to find out you didn't know them at all, drop a CC in the comments. No explanation needed. We'll know. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what happens next is the part people come back and watch twice. It was a Friday evening in late October when Claire told Marcus she had a conference in San Francisco the following Wednesday through Friday. Marcus nodded. Said he hoped the weather would be nice out there this time of year. She smiled and said she hoped so too. He watched her go back to her phone and felt nothing, or rather, felt something so compressed and contained that it had stopped resembling emotion and started resembling strategy. Because there was no conference in San Francisco. Marcus had already confirmed it. What there was a one-way ticket to Portland. The Wednesday she left for her conference, Marcus was already 3 steps ahead. He'd spent the prior week executing the final phase of what he privately called, with the quiet dark humor of a man who had processed his grief entirely alone, the carbon copy. Every move she had made, he had matched. She'd been quietly removing herself from their shared life? He'd been doing the same, cleaner, faster, with legal cover she didn't have. She'd been redirecting finances? He'd already restructured the accounts that were legally his, documented everything jointly held for the divorce proceedings, and ensured there was no ambiguity about what belonged to whom. She thought she was leaving him behind. She was actually leaving last. On the Thursday morning while Claire was in Portland, likely telling Daniel Cho that she was almost ready, that things were almost done in Denver, Marcus sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee and made 3 phone calls. The first was to Patricia Holloway. Divorce papers were filed that morning. Claire would be served within 48 hours at the Portland address, the one Marcus had documented, photographed, and handed to the process server 2 weeks earlier. The second call was to their landlord. Marcus had already secured a new apartment, a clean, quiet 1-bedroom in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, and was formally ending the lease on the house they'd shared. The third call was to Daniel Cho. This is where most people assume Marcus got loud. Got vindictive. Said something cruel or triumphant. He didn't. He simply told Daniel Cho who he was. Husband. 6 years? Denver. And then he emailed him documentation. Not to destroy Daniel. Daniel was just another person Claire had used. But because Daniel deserved the truth that Marcus had been denied. He told Daniel one more thing before hanging up. She was planning to disappear on me the same week she was planning to disappear on you. Check her timeline. The dates line up. Then he hung up, finished his coffee, and began loading the last of his boxes into his. Claire landed back in Denver on Friday evening expecting to find a husband who still didn't know anything. What she found was an empty house. Not dramatically empty, no shattered glass, no torn photographs, no evidence of a breakdown. Just empty. Clean. Cleared out with the kind of precision that told her immediately this wasn't an impulsive reaction. This had been planned. On the kitchen counter, the same one where Marcus had sat alone 6 weeks ago with a laptop full of evidence, there was a single envelope. Inside, a copy of the divorce filing. The name and number of her own attorney, whom Marcus had suggested she retain immediately. And a handwritten note, just 2 lines. I learned from the best. I just learned faster. Her phone began ringing before she'd finished reading it. It was Daniel. We're not going to narrate that conversation because some things don't need narration. But what we can tell you is that by the following morning, Claire's Portland life had collapsed as completely as her Denver one. Daniel, blindsided, humiliated, genuinely heartbroken, had ended things the moment Marcus's email arrived. He'd already changed the locks on the Pearl District apartment by the time she tried calling him back. She had no husband. She had no boyfriend. She had no house in Denver. She had a divorce filing, a process server's card, and the specific, suffocating silence of a life she had double-built, now double-demolished. Here's the first thing most people don't know about this story. Marcus had known for longer than 6 weeks. The receipt in Seattle? That wasn't the beginning of his suspicion. That was just the moment he decided to stop looking away. The truth is, Marcus had sensed the distance for over a year. Not dramatically, not with accusations or arguments, but in the way a man who pays close attention senses when the frequency of something has changed. He hadn't investigated sooner because part of him hadn't wanted to be right. That's the part of this story that cuts the deepest. Not the betrayal. Not the logistics of the double life. But the year he spent quietly hoping he was wrong, still loving her, still showing up, still being the steady, dependable man she was using as a placeholder while she built her real future somewhere else. He grieved the marriage long before he ended it. By the time he made those 3 phone calls, the grief was finished. What was left was clarity. Here's the second thing most people don't expect. Daniel Cho reached out to Marcus 3 weeks after everything collapsed. Not with anger. Not with accusation. With something far more disarming. An apology. He'd had no idea Claire was married. He'd met her at a Portland networking event 18 months prior. She'd introduced herself as single, recently relocated from the Midwest, building a new chapter. He'd fallen for her the same way Marcus had, completely, and without reservation. The 2 men, both deceived by the same woman, in different cities, at the same time, ended up having a 2-hour phone conversation that neither of them had expected to have. Marcus would later describe it as one of the stranger, more human experiences of his life. Two strangers, connected by a woman who had treated both of their hearts like rental properties, always planning to move out, just never telling anyone the lease was up. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Marcus got a message from a mutual friend. Claire wanted to talk. He didn't respond for 4 days. When he finally did, it was with a single question. Why? She called him that evening. And for the first time since any of this began, Marcus heard something in her voice he hadn't heard before. Not manipulation. Not calculation. Regret. She told him she hadn't planned for it to become what it became. That Daniel had started as an escape, from stress, from routine, from the pressure of a life that felt like it was closing in on her, and that it had evolved into something she didn't know how to undo. She told him she'd convinced herself she was doing him a favor. That he deserved better than someone who felt trapped. That leaving cleanly was kinder than the truth. Marcus listened to all of it. Then he said something she hadn't expected. I know. Not because he forgave her, he hadn't decided whether that was something he was capable of. But because he understood, in the deeply human way that wounded people sometimes do, that most betrayals don't come from evil. They come from cowardice. From people who can't tolerate discomfort long enough to be honest. From people who would rather build a secret exit than have an uncomfortable conversation. Claire had done to him what she was afraid life would do to her, leave her behind without warning. And somewhere along the way, she'd become the very thing she feared. He wished her well. He meant it. And then he closed the chapter, not with triumph, not with noise, but with the quiet, settled exhale of a man who had walked through the worst of it, and come out the other side carrying only what he needed. His name. His dignity. His future. There's a version of this story where Marcus explodes. Where he makes noise, causes a scene, posts everything online, burns it all down in a single satisfying moment of public chaos. But that version of Marcus doesn't exist. Because the most dangerous people in any situation aren't the ones who react. They're the ones who decide. Marcus Webb decided, on a quiet Tuesday night in a Denver kitchen, that he would not let another person's cowardice become his undoing. He decided, in the cold, precise way that only the truly wounded can, that if she was going to disappear, he would simply disappear better. And he did. The thing about people who build double lives is that they always believe the walls between them are stronger than they are. They believe the distance protects them. They believe the person they're deceiving is too distracted, too trusting, too small, to ever see what's really happening. They forget that the still ones are always watching. They forget that quiet people plan the longest. And they forget, almost every single time, that trust, once studied carefully by someone with nothing left to lose, becomes a roadmap. Right back to them. If this story hit differently today, if something in it felt a little too familiar, drop a comment. You don't have to explain. We'll understand. And if you're new here, welcome. This is what we do. We tell the stories that remind you that patience, clarity, and one good decision made in the dark can change everything. Subscribe. Share this with someone who needs it. And we'll see you in the next one.